There is a kind of discipline so sharp, so unwavering, that it makes people uncomfortable just by witnessing it. And today, you're going to learn the samurai method that forges that level of unbreakable self-control, the method warriors use to break weak habits permanently. Look at your life for a moment. How many times have you promised yourself you'd change, only to fall back into the same patterns? How many mornings did you say, "Tomorrow will be different," yet nothing changed? You're not alone. Every human is trapped in the same invisible cycle: desire, effort, resistance, collapse. But the samurai understood something modern psychology is only now beginning to confirm. Your habits don't fail because you're weak. They fail because you're fighting the wrong enemy. And once you shift your internal architecture the way ancient warriors did, your habits won't rely on motivation ever again. Before we dive deeper, subscribe, like the video, and comment. I'm ready to break my weak habits. It tells me you're not just watching, you're ready to transform. Chapter 1. The Awakening. The man in this story is not a warrior, not a monk, not a legend. His name is Kenji Sato, a 3-4-year-old office worker in Osaka who had one problem he could never escape. He could not keep a habit alive for more than 7 days. Every Monday, Kenji became a new man. He'd wake early, swear he would train, meditate, read, eat better. By Wednesday, the negotiations began. I had a long day. Maybe I'll skip just once. By Friday, head surrendered. And on Sunday night, he would make promises to a future version of himself that never arrived. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't undisciplined. He was trapped in a silent loop of self-betrayal, the same loop millions fall into every year. Kenji tried everything modern self-help recommended. Habit trackers, dopamine detox, accountability groups, daily alarms. Nothing lasted. Every system collapsed the moment his emotions shifted. The turning point came on a rainy evening when Kenji walked past a small dojo tucked between 2 restaurants. Through the open door, he saw something that stopped him cold. An elderly swordsman repeating a single downward strike, again and again, with a precision that looked almost supernatural. No hesitation, no thought, no emotion, just pure execution. Kenji asked the master, "How do you stay so consistent?" The old man smiled. "You're asking the wrong question. The problem isn't your habits. It's the person who is practicing them." That night, Kenji realized something devastating. He didn't need a new method. He needed a new identity. And that realization would lead him to discover one of the most powerful systems ever developed, a system the samurai used to break weak habits permanently. Chapter 2. The Secret. The Ancient Principle. The old swordsman invited Kenji inside the dojo the next morning. Instead of beginning with stretches or drills, the master placed a single sheet of paper on the floor. On it was written one word: Keiko. Deep practice anchored in timeless repetition. This, the master said, is the principle that shaped every great samurai, and it has nothing to do with willpower. Kenji listened as the master explained the origin of Keiko. In ancient Zen temples, monks practiced sword forms every day at the exact same time. The purpose wasn't to become stronger. It was to dissolve the part of the mind that negotiates, hesitates, or questions. They believed that action should bypass the emotional brain entirely, transforming discipline from a choice into a state of being. Modern science finally caught up. A 2019 MIT study showed that when a behavior is repeated under identical conditions, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, gradually shuts down. In its place, the basal ganglia take over, turning the behavior automatic, effortless, almost identity-based. You struggle, the master said, because you think habits depend on motivation. But the samurai understood something deeper. Motivation is a visitor. Identity is a resident. He led Kenji to a wooden bench. This is where every warrior begins. Before the sword, before the stance, before the strength, You must learn the principle of no-gap practice, uninterrupted, identity-anchored repetition. Kenji frowned. But how do I make it stick? The master pointed at the paper again. Keiko means you repeat the behavior until the mind stops participating. You practice until the practice does itself. That is how samurai break weak habits, not with force, but with transformation. For the first time, Kenji felt something shift. A quiet realization. His failures weren't moral flaws. They were structural flaws, and structure can be rebuilt. Chapter 3. The Internal War. The first week of Keiko felt like stepping into a battlefield, not against the world, but against himself. When Kenji woke at 5:30 a.m. for his first training, his body revolted. His chest felt heavy, his limbs stiff. His mind launched its usual attack. You're too tired. Start tomorrow. One missed day won't matter. This is where most people lose. Not in action, but in negotiation, the master explained. Your brain has two generals, the ancient one and the modern one. The ancient general controls survival, comfort, and energy conservation. The modern general controls intention, discipline, and identity. Every morning, they go to war. Neuroscience agrees. The limbic system, the emotional survival brain, reacts first and fast, pulling you toward comfort and away from challenge. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for discipline, reacts slower, arriving seconds late to the battle. That tiny delay is enough to sabotage most habits. Your weak habits, the master continued, are not the enemy. Your biology is. To Kenji's surprise, the master didn't ask him to fight the resistance. Instead, he asked him to observe it. When resistance appears, he said, say to yourself, I see the resistance. Not I am the resistance. This separates you from the battlefield. This simple shift is backed by Harvard research on affect labeling, which shows that naming emotions reduces amygdala activation, the fear response, and increases executive function. By week 2, something interesting happened. The resistance was still there, but it no longer dictated his actions. The emotions screamed, but Kenji moved anyway. He wasn't winning because he was stronger. He was winning because he stopped believing the enemy's voice. The internal war hadn't ended, but for the first time, he was fighting on the right side. Chapter 4. The System. The One Way. By the third week, Kenji was improving, but he was still inconsistent. Some days he trained with intensity, other days he drifted. The master noticed immediately. You are still negotiating, he said. Your schedule is fixed, but your execution is not, and a habit that changes shape cannot survive. He handed Kenji a scroll. Inside were only 3 lines. Same time, same sequence, same action. This, the master explained, is Ichi-no-michi, the one way. The samurai used it to eliminate the single greatest enemy of discipline, choice. He continued, when you change the how, the when, or the what of a habit, you reopen the door to negotiation. Your brain wastes energy deciding instead of doing. But when everything is identical, the mind eventually stops interfering. Modern neuroscience confirms this. An Oxford study found that predictable repetition reduces prefrontal activity and increases procedural automation. The brain begins to treat the behavior like tying your shoes, unconscious, effortless, inevitable. So the master designed a ritual. 5:30 a.m. Wake, cold water on the face. 12 controlled breaths. 10 minutes stance training. 20 minutes sword forms. 5 minutes reflection. No variation. No creativity. No negotiation. At first, Kenji hated the rigidity. It felt robotic, restrictive, almost lifeless. But by week 4, something powerful happened. His body began moving through the sequence before he consciously remembered what came next. The ritual was imprinting itself deeper than motivation, deeper than emotion, into identity. You see, the master said, repetition creates reality. But only identical repetition creates transformation. For the first time in his life, Kenji felt discipline happening through him, not from him. The system was working. Chapter 5. Practice without gaps. Progress was steady, until the first disruption. One morning, Kenji woke with a fever, his head pounding. Old instincts whispered, "Skip today. You're sick. Rest is responsible." This was the trap the master had been waiting for. There are two kinds of rest, he said. The rest that renews you, and the rest that erases you. Kenji looked confused. The master drew a line in the sand. This is your practice. Every day you move forward, you strengthen the line. But the moment you stop, even once, the line breaks. And when the line breaks, the old self returns. Zen monks call this munen muso, the danger of the first gap. Miss one day, the mind learns that missing is possible. Miss two, and it becomes normal. Miss three, and the identity collapses. Modern psychology agrees. UCLA researchers found that habits degrade exponentially after the first missed repetition, not because of the missed action, but because of the new narrative created. I can skip. So the master gave Kenji a rule. On bad days, shrink the practice, but never break the chain. If he couldn't train 2 minutes, he had to train 2. If he couldn't perform sword drills, he had to hold the stance. If he couldn't stand, he had to breathe consciously. The form can shrink, the master said, but the identity must remain unbroken. So Kenji trained that morning, sweating, slow, exhausted, but present. That tiny act changed everything, because the next morning, the discipline didn't reset. It continued. Kenji realized that true mastery isn't built on perfect days. It's built on unbroken days. A river stays a river because it flows even as a trickle. Practice must never stop flowing. Chapter 6. Pre-solutions, unseen obstacles. By week 6, Kenji's momentum was strong, almost effortless. And that's exactly when the universe began to test him. One day his manager asked him to come in early. Another day a train delay ruined his schedule. Then friends invited him out late at night. Then fatigue hit unexpectedly. None of these obstacles were dramatic, but each one was dangerous because they triggered the most lethal thought in habit formation. Just this once. The master sat Kenji down. You are losing not because the obstacles are strong, but because you have not prepared your answers. He introduced Yobosaku, the art of pre-solutions, used by samurai commanders to survive unpredictable battle conditions. In war, he explained, you cannot predict the enemy's next move, but you can decide your response before the battle begins. When X happens, I do Y. He made Kenji list every obstacle that had ever broken his habits. Waking up tired. Interrupted schedule. Sudden obligations. Emotional resistance. Social pressure. Overwork. Unexpected travel. Then for each one, he had to write a rule. If I wake up tired, I do the minimum version of the ritual. If my schedule shifts, I move the ritual, not cancel it. If I travel, I switch to the travel ritual. If I am stressed, I shorten but do not skip. If invited out, I complete the ritual before leaving. This turned randomness into predictability, chaos into a practiced response. A Yale behavioral study proved this exact mechanism. People who pre-plan their response to obstacles are 91% more likely to maintain a habit, because the brain no longer treats the obstacle as a decision, only as a cue. Kenji felt calmer, stronger, more prepared. The war was no longer chaotic. He had a system, not hope. Chapter 7. Transformation. By week 10, something happened that Kenji couldn't explain. He no longer tried to practice. He no longer planned to practice. He simply practiced. There was no debate, no hesitation. The ritual moved through him like breath. One evening, after completing his routine, Kenji caught his reflection in the dojo window. He didn't look different physically, but there was a quiet steel in his eyes he had never seen before. The master walked beside him. "You have crossed the threshold," he said. "What threshold?" "The point where discipline stops being something you force and becomes something you are," he continued. "Most people try to change their habits while keeping their old identity. That is why they fail. But you buried the old self, the one who negotiated, hesitated, broke promises, and lived in cycles. Modern psychology calls this identity-level change, the most powerful form of behavioral transformation. A Stanford study showed that people who shift identity, "I am the kind of person who," maintain habits at nearly triple the rate of those who focus on outcomes. "You are no longer a man trying to be disciplined," the master said. "You are a disciplined man." Kenji felt the truth of it. His actions were no longer reactions. His rituals were no longer struggles. His choices were no longer fragile. He understood something profound. The samurai method does not make you stronger. It makes the weak version of you impossible to return to. The transformation was not about perfect habits. It was about irreversible identity. And once identity changes, the world changes with it. Chapter 8. The test of mastery transformation, however, is never the end of the story. Because the moment you evolve, life tests the evolution. On the 72nd day, that test arrived. Kenji was assigned an emergency work trip. Early flights, long meetings, unfamiliar environments, the perfect storm for old habits to resurface. As he boarded the plane, fatigue hit him harder than expected. His mind whispered seductively, "You've been consistent for 71 days. Missing one won't matter." But this time, something inside him didn't move. The negotiation didn't begin. Instead, he opened his notebook, where his pre-solutions were written, and turned to page 1. Travel, modified ritual, minimum version, non-negotiable. So in the airport bathroom, he held his stance for 2 minutes. On the plane, he practiced his breathwork. In the hotel room, he repeated his short sword sequence with nothing but his imagination. Nothing perfect, everything continuous. The next morning, the master sent a single message. A samurai is not made by perfect conditions, but by unbroken intention. Modern behavioral science supports this completely. Research from the University of Pennsylvania shows that adaptive continuity, the ability to maintain momentum even imperfectly, predicts long-term success far better than strict routines. By the time Kenji returned home, he hadn't just preserved his habit. He had proven it. Anyone can be disciplined in ideal circumstances. Only the transformed can remain disciplined when the world becomes unpredictable. And in that moment, Kenji realized he was no longer maintaining the practice. The practice was maintaining him. Chapter 9. The Samurai Mind. 3 months after he first entered the dojo, the master met Kenji at sunrise. Today, there was no sword, no stance, no ritual. Instead, the master handed him a cup of tea. "You have learned the mechanics," he said. "Now you must learn the truth." Kenji waited. The samurai never pursued discipline for its own sake. Discipline was simply the visible expression of an inner architecture, a mind that could not be shaken. He explained, "Most people fail because their mind is divided. One part wants growth, another part wants comfort, and the war between them destroys consistency. Zen philosophy calls this Shin Fushin, the mind that does not waver." The master continued, "When your identity aligns with your practice, the mind stops splitting. There is no resistance left to fight. There is only the next action, and then the next." This is supported by neuroscience. Advanced meditators show dramatically reduced activity in the brain's default mode network, the region associated with rumination, self-doubt, and internal conflict. Their actions become clean, direct, uninterrupted. Discipline, the master said, is not the elimination of weakness. It is the alignment of the self, so there is no weak self left to negotiate with. He placed the tea beside Kenji. Your transformation is not complete because your habits are strong. It is complete because your identity has stabilized. Then he spoke the final teaching. The goal of the samurai is not to control the mind. It is to build a mind that needs no control. Kenji understood. Discipline was no longer his weapon. It was his nature. Conclusion. So here's the truth no one tells you. Breaking weak habits is not about motivation, not about willpower, not about hacks, or productivity systems. It is about becoming someone whose identity does not allow old patterns to survive. Like Kenji, you don't rise because you force yourself. You rise because the version of you who falls no longer exists. The samurai method teaches 4 timeless truths. Identity beats motivation. Repetition without variation rewires the brain. Continuity creates unbreakability. Pre-solutions eliminate negotiation. And when these merge, something extraordinary happens. Your discipline stops depending on your mood. Your habits stop depending on conditions. Your progress stops depending on luck. You become the kind of person people cannot ignore, not because you are gifted, but because you are consistent in a way that feels almost frightening. Now the question moves to you. Are you ready to build the identity that makes weak habits impossible? Are you ready to become unbreakable? If this message resonates, subscribe, hit the bell, and comment below. I choose the samurai mind. Your new identity begins now.